You're listening to WSTU Stewart.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
Well, a very pleasant good evening. Time for Startup Talk from Indian River State College with Mr. Tom Kindred.
Thank you, sir, and welcome to another segment and installment of Startup Talk, the show designed to assist and help Treasure and Research Coast residents who want to start, grow, or accelerate their business. As I always say, what a great place it is to own and operate a business along the beautiful Research and Treasure Coast. We will spend time during our hour together tonight to highlight and create awareness regarding the very powerful and robust business assistance and support programs which exist right here in our community at our very own Indian River State College. I am Tom Kindred, and I serve the community as the Regional Director for the Florida Small Business Development Center at Indian River State College. Our show today, as always, is powered by the Florida SBDC at IRSC and the great folks at Express Printing of Port St. Lucie. So how are you this evening, Greg?
Doing well. Doing
All right.
real well.
We are closing in on fall semester at Indian River State College. I believe we're a week away. So things will start happening and popping again on campus. A little quiet today as it was kind of the last day of Summer B semester. Everybody's grades were due this evening, so there's professors are scrambling this evening in front of their computers, getting their grades in. And so summer has ended and fall will begin in about a week. So it will all start to happen on campus again.
Good stuff. Yeah.
How about basketball, I guess, starts up in the fall sometime?
Yeah, actually, next week they'll get together. Cannot have practices yet, but
Okay.
they can do some walkthroughs and stuff like that. And, of course, ladies volleyball is right around the corner.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's always a good time to go out and participate in IRSC sports. I tell folks all the time it's a great opportunity to bring your family out and take part in some real collegiate activities, real collegiate athletic activities. And the basketball games are a ton of fun, as are the women's basketball games and the women's volleyball.
You bet. Yeah. Should be a good year.
You're calling the play-by-play again this year. It's all the same. How many years have you done the play-by-play for the Pioneers?
This will be year 12.
Wow.
Yeah. And we're hoping if the old man can hold out, maybe 40 games this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. As everyone knows, who's a regular listener of Startup Talk, we like to highlight every now and again some businesses in our community. One of our little segments on our program here, we call it the Legacies of Business. And tonight, we have certainly a legacy of business. We have with us a gentleman by the name of Gordon Mock. Welcome to the show, Mr. Mock.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mock is the owner and founder of an incredible business that I was just recently introduced to called Island Style Homes. He has been tucked away in a beautiful building back on Mariah Court? Is it Mariah Circle off of Angle Road. And you're not going to believe what you're going to hear tonight about his 30-year-old business here in Fort Pierce in St. Lucie County, what he does.
Overnight success?
Overnight success.
Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
That's right. We also have with us tonight one of my favorite SBDC consultants here at Indian River State College. And don't tell the other 7 that I said that. That's right.
I'll tell them.
But we've got with us one of my favorites, Emily McHugh. Emily, very talented, intelligent young lady who is a consultant with the Florida SBDC here at IRSC. Emily is one of our specialists with our group. She works in the area of international trade, and she does an incredible service for folks. She produces for businesses what's called an export marketing plan. It's a very robust partnership with Enterprise Florida, but I'm going to let her talk a little bit about that. So we've got with us this evening Miss Emily McHugh from the Florida SBDC at IRSC.
Good evening.
Welcome to the show, Emily. Thanks for
you.
coming back. Emily is also a well-known author. So I told her she could have 1 minute to talk about her book. So, but we'll get to that.
Oh, look at her hold it up for TV.
Yes,
okay.
for TV. Yes, for TV. There's the book.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to get started here this evening because it's I want to get to Mr. Mock as soon as possible because I'm telling you, it's going to be it's impressive what he does with his business Island Style Homes. But I want to start first with you, Emily, and talk just a little bit about the Florida SBDC at IRSC. Give us the quick history and your pathway to the SBDC at IRSC.
Well, I have an international trade finance background. I think my whole life has been, in some shape or another, involved in international business. I've lived in 6 countries. I speak 3 languages. And as I said, I worked in international trade finance. So that involved a lot of geography and the shipping of goods around the world. I worked for a French bank in New York and Mexico City. And so that's kind of where the background for international trade comes from. And also started my own business, Kasori, where we did business overseas as well.
And one of the interesting things about your story is you actually worked with the SBDC when you started your business.
That's correct. Yeah. They were my advisors and consultants for a very long time.
Right. Talk specifically about your work just for a minute in that international trade space. What do you help clients do with the SBDC?
I assist local companies to expand and explore, first of all, opportunities internationally, and then work on a plan to expand into international markets. Mm-hmm. And I do that through the Export Marketing Plan program, the EMP.
Talk a little bit about the EMP. What is that specific tool?
So this tool, it's a grant-based program sponsored by Enterprise Florida and the U.S. Commercial Services with the U.S. Department of Commerce. And it's a program that companies apply for. They have to meet certain criteria and certain qualifications, usually a minimum of sales of about $500,000, employees approximately 5 full-time employees, and other criteria. However, the key is just to apply, and then we can see if they qualify, and we can I help clients with the application process. And what happens is it's a $4,000 grant program of which the client pays $500, and the rest is paid by Enterprise Florida. And what they receive for that is a document, a research document on their industry, their competitors, trends in their industry, with the goal of determining what are the best international markets for their company. And the goal is to create an action plan and a strategic plan so that clients can determine if certain international markets are best for their business. And then they have the opportunity to actually go to a country recommended in the plan through what is called the Gold Key program, which is done by the U.S. Commercial Service. And that is in conjunction with the U.S. Embassy in the location where you're going. So, for example, if a target market is the Bahamas, we would contact the U.S. Embassy in that country, and they would set up meetings with potential clients or business partners locally so that our clients here in the U.S. can meet with them and explore business opportunities.
And, you know, this is all, at the end of the day, this is all really designed to help businesses grow revenues, right?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, it's opportunity for the business. It's a way for them to grow sales, grow revenues, grow profits. And in the same line as like government procurement, we are looking for ways for people to grow their businesses, new customers, new clients.
Yes.
And again, international trade, the global market. I think there's a little statistic out there. I mean, 95% of the world's customers are outside the U.S.
That's correct. It's tremendous opportunity overseas. And it's kind of like the idea if someone said to you, would you be interested in doubling your sales and then tripling your sales and quadrupling your sales? Well, that's what international business opportunities could potentially do. It's not a guarantee that's going to happen every year. But the point is the opportunity is out there.
Well, then I just have one question for you, Emily. Where were you when I was in business? I never got asked the question, Tom, would you like to double your sales? I would have been in the meeting, but nobody ever asked me that.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
It's a great question.
And what's the smallest company you've worked with so far?
The smallest in terms of revenue or what?
Employees, say.
Oh, 1.
Really?
Oh, sure. Of course, because you have to start somewhere. So that's fine. You know, you start where you are and we work from there.
Right.
What about the largest?
Let's see. I think maybe up to maybe about 100 or so employees, or very
wow.
close to it, I would think. Or more like 50, I should say.
Okay.
But I know there's our companies tend to be in a certain boundary range. So 50 would be on the upper range. 100 I think would be a little bit out of bounds and not too common. But it's more 50 and under
Okay.
is our average. And you're never
That's
too
interesting.
small to start international trade. And that's something I want to emphasize, because some people feel you have to be a big company before you ship internationally, and that is not so. There are opportunities.
Well, again, the internet has opened up every business to global markets,
Yes,
right?
it has.
Right.
Definitely so.
All right, Emily. All right, here you go. Start the clock, Greg. Here's your Emily has written a book. It's an incredible book. I purchased a book. So Emily,
Have you read it?
I have started reading it.
Started. Okay. Wonderful.
Emily, tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay, well, this book, the number one question I get asked by people, especially with business, is I want to start a business. I'm interested in business. Where do I begin? And if you turn to page 18 of this handy little guide, it tells you that you need to work backwards. So start from your desired result and then think backwards through the process, and that's how you go about it. That's one way to approach it. But the book is called The Little Girl's Guide to Entrepreneurship, What I Know Now That I Sure Wish I Knew Then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a rallying cry to share insights, lessons learned along the way on entrepreneurship. So I encourage everyone to procure a copy, either on Amazon.com.
Yes.
It's available in ebook and print, and it's also available with me everywhere I go. I always have copies available. It's only $20.
You're on Amazon right now. You're on Amazon Echo as we speak, as a matter of fact.
Well, fantastic. So that should facilitate the procurement
So
process.
we tease Emily a little bit about her book, but she again, Emily is really a standout consultant with the Florida SBDC, not only in our center but across the state. Emily has done some incredible work in the area of international trade and working with her clients and helping her clients, and you know, to do all that and then be able to author the book. She is an impressive businesswoman. So we always wish you the best of luck with the book. And Emily, thank you for all the work you've done with the Florida SBDC here at Indian River State College. Tell us real quickly, how does one get more information on you, the Florida SBDC, and the support programs for international trade?
Well, they can call me directly at, get your pens and paper ready,
I'm ready.
772-460-8978. Again, it's 772-460-8978. Any questions on international trade? And they can also email me. Should I give them that?
Sure.
It's Emily, EMILY, .McHugh, and it's M as in Mary, CHUGH, at Florida, S as in Sam, B as in boy, D as in dog, C as in cat, .org. Emily.McHugh at FloridaSBDC.org.
All right, Emily. Again, thank you for all that you've done, and keep your seat, because we're going to segue now into our guest this evening, Mr. Gordon Mock, and we may want some of your input here. So again, welcome to the show this evening, Mr. Mock.
Thanks for having me.
Incredible story, your company. I can't wait to get into to the story and talk about what you do. But kind of start us. You most importantly, you are a Gator. So we are brothers here, yes, tonight as Gators.
He's a what?
By the way, in 1972, back in the dinosaur years, when
Yes.
I got out of high school in Miami, there were only 2 architecture schools in the state of Florida. University of Florida in
Right.
Gainesville, or the University of Miami, which was so expensive that there was no way I could work as a carpenter long enough to pay my way through that. So now there are several architecture programs in the state university system, but going to Gainesville and spending a total of over 10 years trying to get a 4-year bachelor's and a 2-year master's and then working in between. That was some wonderful years. I mean, and I think any Gator that has experienced Gainesville can agree.
I like to say my junior year was the best 2 years of my life. So at Gainesville, so it's a great place. So give us quickly, Mr. Mott, give us kind of your pathway into island-style homes, and you kind of talked a little bit about. You started at University of Florida, but kind of get us up to current day where you are today.
Well, I'm not only a born entrepreneur, and I really want to give props to Emily for her book, The Little Girl's Guide to Entrepreneurship, because since I was probably 8 years old, and no joke, I knew that I was going to be an architect, and most architects are entrepreneurs to begin with. Granted, a lot of architects do end up working for large corporations and so on, but just as the old TV show, Mr. Ed from many years ago proved, and I do think that was one of my influences, where he was an architect who worked out of the barn in his backyard, and he had a Dutch door where his horse, Mr. Ed, would watch him drawing and designing buildings. And I remember thinking, wow, what a great life, to where he doesn't get up in the morning and fight traffic and go somewhere. And but to me, it was really not even a decision. I just knew from, or in fact, I guess my first educational influence to become an architect was in 7th grade. In 7th grade in public schools in Miami, you got a choice. That's when you had your first choice of electives. You can either go into auto shop or wood shop, or home economics, or architectural drafting. And I remember that the thought of that
that's
just
great.
clicked in my mind. And I'm very proud to say that very quickly my instructor, who, imagine being in a junior high school in a big city like Miami back in the 60s, he had a lot of uninterested or disinterested students who were just kind of filling up time, or they had to pick something. And I was the one always up in the front of the class, learning how to letter properly and learning how to draft and draw properly. And so it kind of progressed from that. In North Miami High School, I was also in the architectural program, and was encouraged by my instructors to pursue that. And as I said, it was really no choice. It was Gainesville or bust. And so I spent those 10 years and was really kind of well known and kind of in a way encouraged so much by my professors and the whole university, because it was something that I really kind of knew that I was going to be doing. And talking about entrepreneurship in kind of the purest form, I read this several years ago, and it's become something that I really believe, that when first of all, to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to go into something you're passionate about. It's got to be something that's going to get you up out of bed every morning, and it's not about the money. It's not about travel or recognition or anything else. You have to love what you're doing, or at least it makes it a lot easier when you do. But what I heard or what I read was that studies have shown that most young people, when you're between the ages of 10 and 12, is when people start to realize, or they can get an inkling of what is it they'd like to do. And in my case, that's what happened. When I was 10 or 11 years old, I realized that architecture and drawing and all that was just something that I really love to do.
So you got your architecture degree. You returned to Miami. I think you opened up your own shop.
Actually, by 1980, when we left Gainesville, I realized that West Palm Beach was as far south as I would want to move and raise a family. We had 2 kids at the time. And so we moved to Palm Beach County in 1980. And by 1990, it dawned on me that I just did not want to live the rest of my life and pass away someday in Palm Beach County. And so we started looking at the demographic.
You did really think ahead, didn't you?
Well,
yes, you wanted to make sure you knew where you wanted to be.
That's what architects are. Yeah. That's what an architect is, a planner.
That's right. Okay.
And a planner needs to think long term, and he needs to look ahead. A good planner.
That's right.
And so I do drawings sometimes of projects that don't actually come to fruition or get built for 4, 5, 10 years sometimes, but you still have to plan ahead. So long story short, my former partner and I, we studied. He was still living in Miami and dying to get out. because even in 1980, we could very easily see what South Florida would and has become. That's almost 40 years ago in terms of traffic and crime and everything else. And we studied the demographic information and the comprehensive plans of every county almost in southeast or eastern Florida. And in fact, we almost moved to St. Johns County, which is St. Augustine. We also looked and were very close to deciding to relocate to Titusville in the Cocoa area. We kind of ruled out Martin County because it was so close to Palm Beach County that I kind of felt like that if I was going to kind of get out ahead of the wave, if you will, and move to a part of Florida that I could spend the next 30 or 40 years of my life and yet have a wonderful quality of life, that Stewart and Martin County, I could tell it was going to be inheriting a lot of the traffic and everything. And that's true today. A lot of people commute from, believe it or not, from Stewart all the way into Palm Beach and Broward County. So lo and behold, the Treasure Coast, St. Lucie County and also Indian River County just kind of jumped off the pages as a place that was going to have growth, had good school system, had good infrastructure, had a port and an inlet, and I felt 30 years ago that shipping our product to the Bahamas and other places would be kind of a natural here. Also, the airport here has always had
an airport that is actually, when you look at it on a map, larger than Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale.
And it has a customs office. So
there you go.
Whereas
to
enter the United States from, say, the Bahamas, and there's a lot of people every day flying back and forth to and from the Bahamas, but you either have to clear customs in West Palm Beach or Melbourne. There's nothing in between. Stewart doesn't have an international airport, but St. Lucie County International Airport has I think, a lot of potential for foreign travel and so on.
But let's I want to get to your business here because this is so interesting. Let's so when did you start Island Style Homes? When was it all started here?
Well, I was in private architectural practice in Palm Beach, and was kind of enlisted by some friends of mine from Miami to go to Maui, Hawaii, and design and oversee the construction. And I made that year I made 6 or 8 trips back and forth to Hawaii. And the deal was
life.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you would say that. We'll get back to that comment. I've heard that comment more than a few times. But anyway, so my friend said, "Look, we want to have a vacation home in Hawaii. If you make it happen, we'll cut you in as a partner." So when I started dealing with island construction, when you realize even in an island like Maui, Hawaii, which has got, a Home Depot now in Maui, but everything on an island comes in on a ship or an airplane. Every light bulb, every screw, every nail. And so it was literally one night I was sitting on a beach in Maui after having spent the whole week dealing with subcontractors and carpenters who really were all surfers. They only did carpentry just waiting for the waves to kick them. In fact, every pickup truck on the Hawaiian Islands that carpenters rode around in, they all had big binoculars on their dashboard. And the Hawaiian Islands have very high altitude. So one guy might be sitting in his truck in the morning scanning the coastline.
The lookout.
and if he would yell to all the other carpenters that a particular break was going off right then, it was almost funny unless you were trying to get a house built, but the entire job site would just pack up and leave. They would literally just take the day off if the surf was good. At any rate, it dawned on me that someone needed to come up with a prefabricated building system, a post and beam building system that was very hurricane resistant. I intentionally don't say hurricane proof, although we've built 150 or 75 different buildings, and I'm very proud to say we've only had very minor hurricane damage. And in fact, we've probably had over 75 buildings over these last 30 years that have taken direct hits by major hurricanes and survived very well. But at any rate, I also realized, being an architect, that I love to design, and usually run-of-the-mill kind of prefabricated buildings, custom design is not their strong suit, and that's not what they're about. Most prefabricated buildings are intended to be cheap and quick, and not the kind of thing you would build on a beach somewhere as a resort or a restaurant or as a vacation home. And having grown up in Miami and having gone to the Florida Keys as a kid many times, the Florida Keys are predominantly vacation homes. I mean, there are people who live there full time, but there's a lot of second homes in the Florida Keys, and Florida in general has a very strong second home market. So that was the genesis of the idea, was to create a company that could custom design buildings of any shape, any size, but buildings that would really be architecture. In other words, the definition of architecture is a building that elicits a positive emotional response. That's a definition that a guy named Vitruvius, a Roman 4,000 years ago, created that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, when you walk into a really well-designed church, it elicits a positive emotional response.
That's your gee whiz.
Yeah,
type.
you walk into a cathedral like Notre Dame in Paris, and it'll take your breath away for the first minute or so, because the emotional response is so positive and uplifting. So the same is true of a hotel or a restaurant or a little cottage on a beach. The goal of an architect is to create buildings that do that are architecture and that they make people feel better.
But so the uniqueness about island-style homes is you are actually manufacturing these homes here in Fort Pierce, and you are shipping these homes to either other locations in the country or other locations across the globe. I mean, you're shipping these, you package them up and you ship them, and then is the correct term, you reassemble them at their location, their destination?
Well, not reassemble. They're just assembled.
They're assembled.
It's
okay.
like a Tinker Toy set, if you remember that from when we were all kids, of beams and columns, and it's all the same pieces and parts. We've done 12,000-foot custom furniture showrooms in Charleston, South Carolina, all the way down to my own little 850-square-foot cottage up in the mountains of North Carolina. You can use these same parts to put together a very wide range of buildings, and I think probably one of the most noteworthy projects we've done, all fabricated right here in little old Fort Pierce, is the Island Grand Suites at Little Palm Island Resort in the Florida Keys. It is really one of very few legitimately 4-star rated resorts in Florida. People think Florida's got just, hundreds of 4 and 5-star resorts, but not really. But that was a situation where even though Little Palm Island is within sight of US 1 in the Florida Keys, it's still an island, and everything has to go on a boat to get there. And after a hurricane 15 years ago, they contacted me literally the next day, the hotel group out of Seattle that owned Little Palm, and they said, we need to rebuild what are our best buildings, because these are buildings that the average room rate is about $3,500 a night in these buildings. And
Wait a minute, back up.
Yes.
What?
And some of their guests in our buildings that I've been told are people like Oprah and Madonna go to places like this. And yet the building, the way that we designed and constructed, was really very quick and inexpensive to build.
And again, going back to your, it's tough to build something on an island because it's all got to come in.
Yeah.
You're basically putting all the parts and pieces together here.
Yes.
You load it on trucks, you put it in containers, it gets shipped. So you're really not having to source anything once you get to the island.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of times, we did a big house in the island of Kauai in Hawaii for an attorney from Beverly Hills. And that was his whole point. He says, I don't want to have to buy anything or pick anything out. So we literally followed through and bought all the furniture, all the linens, dishes, everything. We completely set up this big, beautiful vacation home in Kauai. And I literally called him on the phone and told him it's ready and meet me on the island and I'll give you the keys and there you go. So we can take it all the way through. Right. Because the other thing that I learned going through architecture school and working as a carpenter is that on a lot of islands, the workforce is either not very well trained or they're not very disciplined, like the surfer carpenters in Hawaii. They're people who are it's just different building buildings on islands. So the more that we can panelize and pre-cut and pre-paint and pre-package, then, in fact, people have asked me to come up with a ratio, the ratio between a man-hour of labor in my shop here in Fort Pierce, how many man-hours of labor does that replace or equal on islands? And some islands, they've got very good carpenters and very good people to do the work. Some islands that we've worked on, like Middle Caicos, an island with only 250 people living on it in the Turks and Caicos Islands, 1 man-hour here probably replaces 5 or 6 man-hours on that island. So obviously, if you're building a resort or a restaurant or whatever, or retail shops, you want to do as much of that work offshore as you can.
And I know that when we met and we talked about what you do at Island Style Homes, you're a little leery of the term, like we said, prefab, because people think of prefab as being somewhat quick and a little low quality. But when we talk about prefab at Island Style Homes, this is not a low quality product.
No.
This is crown molding. This is chair
Yes,
this is
that's right.
top notch all the way.
If you're going to get Oprah to pay $3,500 a night to go there, it's got to be good.
Right.
But at the same time, I've kind of identified a phenomenon over the years that I've nicknamed the funkiness factor. That our buildings, and that's part of the reason the name of the company is Island Style. We've had clients that are incredibly wealthy people, but when they're in the islands, they're in flip-flops and cargo shorts and T-shirts. And they may have multiple homes elsewhere, but when they're going to an island property, whether they own it or whether it's a resort, there's a certain casual, comfortable island style or island ambiance that they're after. And believe it or not, achieving that ambiance, achieving that feeling that when people walk into a suite and they get that positive emotional response and they look out the ocean view or whatever, that's not easy. Yeah, it really is that ambiance or that character to build that into an entire resort or into a commercial building or into a private home. It's something I've been practicing now for 30 years.
Wow.
How to create that ambiance.
And what's unique, another unique. I mean, there's a lot unique about what you do. The whole prefabrication issue is very unique. But what makes you unique and what makes you really valuable to a client or a business that's building a structure is you do all the phases. I mean, you can do because you are an architect, you can handle the design.
Yeah.
Then you can actually, oversee your general contractor. So you can also handle the construction. So you can really design, fabricate, build, ship, and assemble the home. And you can really control all those steps and segments of the process.
That's right. And whether our clients are like Noble House Hotels that owns Little Palm or a private individual, they've got busy lives and businesses going on somewhere else. And just like when you go to your doctor, you hope your doctor can prescribe or whatever it takes to take care of you. If your doctor says, well, you need to go see 5 other specialists, I'm not going to be able to help you,
Right.
You don't want to hear that.
Right.
So my clients, in fact, right now I'm master planning a 61 cottage project over on the southwest coast of Florida. I really am not at liberty to say which little island it's on. But in a situation like that, the developer of that project, he would be hard pressed to find a master planner and an architectural firm and a Florida licensed construction company, which our sister company, Island Style Builders, has been a Florida licensed contractor for 25 years, and then find someone who also could follow through and ship in, or who can outsource, select, and then ship the light fixtures, the finishes, and everything else. And when it's all said and done, you end up with a 4-star quality of building.
Well, and what I think is interesting too is obviously you're a trained architect and builder, but you've really had to now become a logistics person too. I mean, you've got to figure out how to get this stuff on a boat in a container and ship someplace. I mean, that must have been an interesting part of this whole process of building your model, your business model.
Yes. In fact, my wife Susan, who we've been together for over 40 years and met in Gainesville, and she now is really the brains of the operation, if you will, and she has really been the one that has gone to school on creating, for instance, customs documentation. Before you can ship something into a foreign country, you've got to give them the value of your product and the details and all the quantities and all of that. And so we've just had to learn as we go along.
Are you kind of considered an exporter?
Yes.
Yeah.
In
So
fact, that's why I've just been so amazed to work with Emily and to have taken her report, her export marketing plan, that we just received a few weeks ago, I guess. Yep. And it's a book. I mean, it is a wealth of information for a small businessman from Fort Pierce, Florida, to really understand, or to, I mean, I've kind of nibbled around the edges of foreign sales, and we've probably shipped 80 or 90 buildings to the Bahamas because they're so close. But when you really do look at the wealth of information that Emily and that the State College program can bring to it, and as you said, it's also in connection with or coordination with Enterprise Florida right. and the U.S. Department of Commerce. And, you know, I almost never really quite thought about it in terms of increasing foreign export. I mean, the state of Florida needs to increase its foreign export. Of course, the whole United States of America
sure.
needs to maximize what we can make here and then export somewhere else.
So when you're filling out these customs forms, are you shipping raw materials? Because you're not shipping a finished product.
Well, it's funny you would say that. Some of my own Bahamian clients, people who live in the Bahamas and have bought buildings from us over the years, and therefore in the Bahamas there's no income tax or very minimal property taxes and things like that. The Bahamian government, just as in Cayman and Turks and Caicos and places like that, they depend on duty. So if you bring a car into the Bahamas, you're going to pay the Bahamian government as much in duty as you paid to buy that car in the U.S. And so some of what we ship can be labeled just lumber. Now we might repackage it a little bit, and we might get the quantities correct and so on for our project. But when it goes in as lumber, you only pay the documentary stamp tax. Now, however, the wall panels that we build and the high quality windows and doors that we install in our wall panels and all the stainless steel connections and all that kind of thing do carry a pretty high duty going into these countries. But I can advise my clients that this is true because I've seen it happen so many times. When you factor in the reduced local labor that you're going to pay for, when you bring a building in that's going to get erected in 2 or 3 weeks, and if the other subcontractors, electric and plumbing and air, if they're also efficient and on their game, if you're like Little Palm Island Hotel, you might be able to open for business and go back into collecting those very high room rates 4 or 5 months quicker than if you were just doing it locally.
Yeah, and I want to address that because that was a big part of Emily's presentation that morning, was kind of comparing how long it took to build something versus, you know, the prefab world. And so that is a big factor with you. You basically can go in and do things in a third of the time or something that if you tried to build it from scratch in the Bahamas.
And also the fact that we can do commercial buildings as well as residential buildings. Most prefabricated building companies go either one way or the other. Either they do big metal buildings for factories or they do small, cheap houses. But there's a niche market, and that really is kind of the best term that anybody's ever shared with me about my business, is that we have a really very small niche market. But if you want a high-end custom design resort building, but you need to get it built in a relatively small, you could hire the best architects in New York or Atlanta or wherever, and they'll give you, which is what I did for many years in Palm Beach, they'll hand you a big roll of paper of drawings, and they'll say, good luck. I hope you can go to the Bahamas and get this building built that we've come up with. Whereas we then turn around and take our own drawings that we get approved and get all the permits and all that wherever we happen to be building. But then we can follow through and buy all the material here, employ or use our local workers to put it together and pre-cut and pre-paint. And in reading some of the questions that you supplied me with, you really hit on the crux of it all, though. The building system, I think we've got that pretty well worked out. But in the production, the ability to produce the product here in Fort Pierce, I think we've got a good handle on that. We're at a low ebb right now, and we are still kind of recovering from the Great Recession because the second home market, even for people who have plenty of money to spend, people don't buy or they're not building vacation houses and hotels and things like they were before 2008. But the trick is connecting the marketing to the design and the fabrication and the construction. Right. And that's what someone like Emily has really been able to start opening my eyes to is, how do I fit that piece of the puzzle in where we're making contact? Usually we just depend on word of mouth, just in a website. islandstylehomes.com is our very kind of simple homemade website, which is going to be getting much better very soon thanks to Emily's advice and help. But I mean, we've often thought, how can we go beyond just kind of the random accident of people emailing me and saying, we want to do a big house on Bahamian Island.
I love that, the random accident. We need to use that with some other businesses.
Yeah.
Going back to that L.A. attorney.
Yeah.
So what did he tell you? I've got beachfront property, plop a house here.
What he told me, he said, we stayed in one of your buildings in the Bahamas. And he says, and we loved the feel of it. The look was great and all of that, but he said, we asked the little resort owner in the Bahamas, who did this? Who designed it? He said, we had no idea that the guy that designed it also fabricated it and also flew back and forth and visited the job site and supervised, or not supervised, but inspected it all. And this was sitting in his office in Beverly Hills. He had bought me a round trip, first-class plane ticket just to talk to me. So we're sitting in his office, and he says, we love Kauai, Hawaii, though, and we've already bought beautiful property. He showed me the property. He said, but I bill my time, and this is 20 years ago. He says, I bill my time at $6.50 an hour. He says, so I don't have any time.
Well, he was one of the cheaper ones.
Yeah. Well, that was 20 years ago. But he said, therefore, I can't make 5 trips a year to Hawaii to try to get something built. He says, and my wife and I have done quite a few homes where we've hired architects. We know what we like. We know what we want. And the prospect of them having to find an architect in Hawaii and make this happen was just daunting. And that's something that I have kind of held the hand of my clients and walked them through this minefield of trying to build on an island somewhere many, many times. And so that was the whole key there, was that we could just, and I only flew to L.A. and met he and his wife 3 times over a course of 6 to 8 months. They approved all the drawings and things, and he set up the banking and so on in Hawaii. He kind of gave me carte blanche on a lot of it, and all that you do is done here in Fort Pierce. Yes, it is. And then, like I said, this was not an accident. We picked Fort Pierce. And as a matter of fact, I went to school. We bought our property at the end of Mariah Circle, which for many, many years was Avenue D. We're at the very western cul-de-sac end of Avenue D. And we bought our property from R.K. Davis because I knew his son in Gainesville. And it just kind of fell into place.
You're a lot more handsome than Doug is.
Not as tall, though.
Can you share something about the ambiance? What specifically about the ambience that this attorney saw in the Bahamas that he wanted replicated? Was it the view? What? How do you?
Well, having lived most of my life in Florida and having been through hurricanes, and we all live with the humidity and the heat and the mosquitoes and the no-see-ums if you're near the coast and so on. And I was always disappointed, both in college and in private practice, that most architects in Florida came from somewhere else. And they just don't get if you're south of Orlando, you're in a subtropical climate. And even at the University of Florida, they didn't give us any special knowledge about working in a subtropical climate with hurricanes and flooding and torrential rains and heat and the sun and all the factors that we deal with. So if you're practicing architecture in Dallas, Texas, there's no reason to think you can just move to southwest or southeast Florida and be a good designer. So when you take into effect the climate of a location, the local culture, the people, the history, and so on, a lot of people consider, and I think it's a correct characterization, that what we do, our style, the island style, was very influenced by British colonial architecture, which has been practiced in this part of the world and around the world. I mean, the Brits 400 years ago went from England to Singapore to Hong Kong to the Bahamas, Jamaica, so on. And so it's a style that people are very familiar with without even knowing how familiar they are with it. I mean, metal roofs, what we call porches here in the South, in a lot of the islands, they call verandas.
Oh, yeah.
But you wrap a big veranda under roof around a house with high windows and operable doors and things like that for the ventilation and the view of the ocean or whatever. So it's all those factors: history, climate, culture, location, all that kind of thing is what we try to bring together, so that, in fact, people have called me and asked me, could you build a building for me in outside of Pittsburgh or somewhere? Well, in fact, even my own house in North Carolina is kind of stretching the practicality of what we do. Our buildings are really much more intended for island locations.
And again, the part that I guess I was so surprised by is, I'm a local, been around a long time in these parts, but never knew island-style homes was here. I mean, you really have been kind of tucked away. Most of your work, while it's all built here in Fort Pierce, you're using local suppliers here in Fort Pierce and the Treasure Coast. Most of your work is really someplace else. So nobody in the Treasure Coast market really got to see it. You were a local builder, but nothing was being built local.
Other than my own shop and offices.
Your own shop, right.
Well, at the same time, or backing up a little bit, another aspect of why did I found this company and why have I been practicing in this genre all these years was to be able to use the system to develop and build my own projects. So back 20-some years ago, my former partner and I, we bought 190 acres of land just across the county line. In fact, our southern boundary of that 190 acres was the county line between St. Lucie and Indian River County. So our property is in Indian River County, but it ran from US 1 all the way down to the river. And before the recession, we had plans, and we still have all the approvals to build 75 island-style homes in a beautiful wooded uplands hammock. So we did, on that property we bought, we discovered 2 canals that had been dredged by GDC in Vero Shores back many years ago. And then GDC went belly up and were indicted and went bankrupt before they could get around to building that. And so the first project was River Point, which we built in behind Vero Shores, which is a neighborhood east of US 1, just across the county line. And so now we're going to be using our own system and our own construction method and so on to build what is going to be called Homestead Village, which it'll probably be the first, what's known as an agri-hood. That's a new term that's been coined by, I think, the Urban Land Institute. But agri-hoods, well, there's a saying in development of residential communities that ag is the new golf. Very few residential developers are building golf courses anymore because the baby boomers aren't playing golf like they used to, and the millennials don't care to play golf. Right. Whereas growing your own fruits and vegetables in a community, having community gardens where in other words, all the staff that mow the medians and trim the trees and do all that in a conventional neighborhood, it's all ornamental.
Right.
All of our landscaping is going to be edible. In fact, that's a whole term that's been used for 30 or 40 years, edible landscaping.
Great.
I mean, and not only St. Lucie County, but Indian River County is known worldwide for our citrus and things like that. So Homestead Village is going to have, on all of our common areas, rather than just planting them in sod and bushes, there will be orchards, there will be groves, there will be organic gardens, and also all of the houses will have their own kitchen garden. That was a phrase coined during World War II, that in England, everybody had a kitchen garden, so they could go out and grow their own food during the war. I grew up in North Carolina for quite a while, and everybody, all my relatives in North Carolina, all had vegetable gardens. So anyway, that's the other application of our company and of our system, is to be able to build buildings here in Florida that have that, what we call here, the cracker style, not the island style.
As we come kind of to a close, again, it really is just an incredible find to meet you and know what you guys do here. And again, as we close and we talk to folks that have been in business like you have for 30 years now here in Fort Pierce, I mean, what, again, kind of quickly as we close here, I mean, some of the biggest challenges faced by business owners and operators for those kind of aspiring entrepreneurs that are looking to start a business? What's your advice out there?
Well, as I said before, it's almost like the business should find you. If you think you're going to just think up a business that might be very profitable or might be very stylish or whatever, you've got to be able, and having run this particular business for 30 years now, it's got to be something that's really going to keep you interested and really keep you involved and engaged. And no matter what happens, you are willing and able to either climb over it, go around it, or bust through it. And so for most entrepreneurs, I think that's the key, is make sure you go into something that you can just love it and make it your life.
Yep.
And not have to try to put a square peg into a round hole.
Good point. How does someone get more information about you and Island Style Homes?
Well, of course, the website, islandstylehomes.com, or they can email us at islandstylehomes@comcast.net, or they can call me and speak to me personally at our offices here in Fort Pierce at 772-464-6259. Because really every project that we've ever done begins with a conversation. It begins with someone telling me where they want to build, what they want to do, what their dreams are. It's amazing. I mean, as an architect, I did branch banks and hotels and things like that. But when you're doing dreams, when you're fulfilling dreams for people, that's very gratifying.
Listen, we appreciate you coming out tonight, Mr. Mock. Incredible story with your company, and look forward to working with you and talking about all the projects you have lined up. So with that, we'll bring to close another segment of Startup Talk. I want to thank our guest, Gordon Mock with Island Style Homes, our very own Emily McHugh with the Florida SBDC at IRSC. You can always get more information about what we do at the www.irscbiz.com site. I want to always thank our partners here at WPSL and WSTU. And with that, we will talk to you next week on Startup Talk.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie. WPSL on Google Home, Echo, and Alexa. Time right now, 7 o'clock.